Legally, I died on a Tuesday. It started with a declined card at the grocery store. I shrugged it off, figured it was fraud protection or a billing error. But when I called the bank, they couldn't verify my identity. The woman on the phone kept repeating the same phrase, "I'm sorry, Mr. Wells, but this account is no longer active." Then came the returned mail. My name scrawled in red ink across unopened envelopes, "Deceased, return to sender." My driver's license renewal bounced. My health insurance portal showed an inactive profile. One by one, the systems I existed in shut their doors like I was a ghost, trying to walk through walls. I hadn't spoken to my wife in 18 months, not since she filed for separation and moved with the kids to a house 2 counties over. She said it was temporary, just space to think. But the texts stopped, then the calls, then the photos of the kids dried up. I told myself she was overwhelmed, that she needed time, that it wasn't personal. But now, standing in a bank lobby with a rejection notice in my hand and a frozen account, I realized something else. This wasn't time. This was erasure. I sat in my truck outside the bank until the parking lot emptied. The sun dipped low over the gas station across the street, everything stained in that late afternoon gold that makes even parking lots look cinematic. A man in his 30s, still breathing, still very much alive, unable to prove he existed. I opened the glove box, pulled out my expired insurance card, passport, old utility bills, all of them meaningless now. I'd built a life that could be erased with a few strokes of a pen and the right paperwork filed in the right courtroom. My name is Ethan Wells, 41 years old, father of 2, freelance systems engineer, alive. But somewhere in the state records of Pennsylvania, I was a dead man, and someone had made sure of it. I didn't find out the truth until a friend at the DMV agreed to run my file off the record. She looked pale when she handed me the printout, like she'd seen something she wasn't supposed to. "You're flagged as deceased," she said quietly, glancing over her shoulder. "Cause of death listed as overseas accident, non-confirmable remains. Filed through the court system. Certified. Sealed." I read the page 3 times. My name, my date of birth, my social security number. Date of death, April 11th. The same week I'd been in Arizona on a consulting job, installing infrastructure for a startup. Whoever filed it hadn't just made a mistake. They'd constructed an entire lie, vague enough to avoid scrutiny, clean enough to be accepted. My death certificate was signed by a notary I'd never met and witnessed by someone who didn't exist. I asked my friend if it was possible to find out who filed the request. She hesitated, then pulled up the record on her terminal. "It was submitted by an attorney's office out of Lancaster," she said, "attached to a custody petition." The room went quiet. Lauren. I left without saying anything. Drove to a park I used to take the kids to when they were little. I sat on a cold bench, watching a kid in a red hoodie kick a soccer ball against a tree over and over. Mechanical, rhythmic, like he didn't care if it ever bounced back. Lauren had gone to court, told a judge I was dead. And not just that. I wasn't listed on any active custody filings anymore. She'd been granted full legal and physical custody of both kids. I wasn't just dead on paper. I was gone from their lives. Erased from photos, from documents, from memory. I'd let her have space, given her time. Trusted that we'd work it out, for the kids if nothing else. But she hadn't been searching for peace. She'd been plotting a burial, and I hadn't even known I was the one being lowered into the ground. Next Tuesday, I was supposed to meet with a new client in Chicago, But first, I had to do something else. I had to come back from the dead. It didn't happen all at once. There wasn't one big fight, no broken plates or slammed doors. Just silence that stretched a little longer every evening. Glances that turned into avoidance. Conversations that turned into transactions. The kind of erosion you don't notice until the foundation's already gone. Lauren used to greet me at the door with stories about the kids. What Ella said in the car. How Micah made a fort from couch cushions and refused to come out until dinner. But somewhere along the way, I became background noise. She'd started talking over me in front of the kids, correcting me mid-sentence like I couldn't be trusted with details. Then she stopped talking at all. She said it was stress, her new job, my travel, that we needed to rebalance things. I agreed, naively, started skipping work trips, tried making dinners again. But the air never softened. She spent more time on her phone, whispered conversations, locking it when I entered the room. The kids picked up on it too. Ella stopped showing me her drawings. Micah would look at his mom for approval before answering my questions. I started hearing my name spoken like a warning. Ethan, not now. Or Ethan, don't start. Not Dad. Not even your father. Just Ethan. Then came the custody paperwork. Just in case, she said. A formality. Nothing personal. But the terms were lopsided. She called me unpredictable in the filing. Emotionally unavailable, she used phrases I'd never heard from her mouth, but read in custody forums and family court blogs. A month later, she filed for a temporary restraining order after an argument about screen time. Said I had a concerning tone and that I slammed a door hard enough to scare the kids. I didn't fight it. I moved out voluntarily, her word. Thought maybe time apart would cool things down. It didn't. She changed their pediatrician, stopped answering my calls, left my name off the emergency contacts. I only realized how far gone things were when Micah called me Ethan to my face, and Lauren just smiled like it was normal. The house looked the same from the outside, same shutters, same cracked driveway, but it felt different. Like a movie set of a place I used to know, familiar but hollow. I knocked once, then twice. No answer. Through the front window, I saw a baby gate I didn't recognize, toys that weren't ours, and walls repainted in pale gray. The locks had been changed. The porch light was on in the middle of the afternoon. I walked back to my car, unsure what I was even trying to find, when a voice called from across the street. Mr. Wells? It was Mrs. Harrington, the neighbor 2 doors down. She looked nervous, glancing back at her own porch like she wasn't sure if she should be talking to me. I thought you were dead, she said. I froze. Excuse me? She told us, she continued, voice lower now. Said you died overseas, some kind of accident. The whole block signed a card. I didn't want to believe it. She reached into her coat pocket and handed me a folded piece of lined paper. Inside, in shaky cursive, was one sentence. She said you died. I knew that wasn't true. There was no signature. I left quickly after that. Drove to the school Ella and Micah used to attend. The front desk receptionist typed in their names and blinked at her screen. I'm sorry, she said. We don't have any students by those names enrolled here. I asked her to try Lauren's maiden name. Her fingers paused, then typed again. This time she nodded. Ella and Micah were now listed under Reed. No forwarding info. No emergency contacts I recognized. Just 2 new names, 2 new lives, and a mother who had convinced an entire system that their father didn't exist. I sat in the parking lot of that school for nearly an hour, engine off, watching parents I didn't know pick up kids I couldn't recognize anymore. They weren't missing. They weren't taken. They'd been rewritten. And I was starting to realize just how deep Lauren had buried me. I called in a favor. Caleb used to be my roommate back when we were both pretending law school wasn't grinding us into the ground. He stuck with it. I didn't. Now he's a mid-tier associate at a firm downtown, buried in contract law and non-disclosure agreements. But he still owed me for a Vegas trip I paid for and never let him forget. I need access, I told him. Custody records. Mine. He hesitated. You're not supposed to be able to view sealed family court records unless you're alive, I said flatly. A long pause. Then, give me an hour. I met him in the back corner of a coffee shop we used to haunt after midnight lectures. He slid his laptop across the table, screen already pulled up. You've got 10 minutes before the session time's out. Don't ask me how I got it. I didn't. Lauren's petition was 12 pages long, neatly typed, formatted like it had been reviewed by someone who knew exactly which words triggered concern. Deceased spouse, lack of available next of kin, necessity of updated guardianship. The story was clean. Ethan Wells, freelance consultant, presumed dead after a car crash during a private job in Ecuador. No body recovered. Employer declined to pursue international confirmation. Filed through proper channels. Attached were court minutes. A family court judge granted full custody to Lauren. No opposition, no hearing, no notification required. The same order approved the children's last name change. Child support obligations were officially nullified. The last page was a copy of the judge's signature. 10 minutes later, I closed the laptop and slid it back to Caleb, who looked at me like I'd just told him I'd come back from the moon. She buried me in 12 pages, I said, and nobody blinked. The system didn't question it because nobody expects someone to fake a death when the motive is custody and convenience. If anything, my absence made it easier. I wasn't a person. I was paperwork. But not for long. It was cleaner than I expected. The death certificate listed the date, a vague cause, vehicular impact, and a location just north of Quito, Ecuador. There was no embassy confirmation, no next of kin contact. Just a check mark beside presumed deceased. It was signed by a notary public named Jeanette C. Hollis and witnessed by someone named Kevin Sandler. Neither name meant anything to me. I started with the employer listed on the form, ArrowPoint Analytics, a small data security firm I'd done contract work for 4 years ago. I hadn't touched a project for them since 2019, and I certainly hadn't worked for them in Ecuador. I called the number on the certificate. Disconnected. A deeper search showed the business was dissolved 2 years ago. The registered agent had moved states. No forwarding information. The notary was harder to trace. Jeanette Hollis wasn't listed on the State Notary Commission anymore. Her license had expired 3 years prior. The office address associated with her name was now a vape shop. Fake company. Expired notary. No record of the witness. It was a scaffold of lies, built just sturdy enough to support a legal decision. Whoever helped Lauren knew how to make it look passable, just enough legitimacy to avoid a red flag. I sat at my kitchen table with a yellow legal pad, scribbling names and timelines. I circled 3 things. Employer no longer exists. Notary license expired before signature date. Witness untraceable. This wasn't just opportunism. It was a coordinated effort. Documents like these don't just fall into place without guidance. Someone had walked her through it. Maybe a friend in legal services, maybe someone she paid. I stared at the notary's signature. J.C. Hollis. What scared me most wasn't the forgery. It was how easily it had worked. How simple it was to fabricate a death, erase a person, and move on without consequence. Lauren hadn't lost me. She hadn't mourned me. She'd erased me. Now I had to figure out how to haunt her story just enough to take my name back. And my children. Tessa Morgan was one of the few people who ever got me to sit for a profile. It was a piece for a local lifestyle magazine, Tech Nomads of the Appalachians. She'd found me interesting because I worked remote before it was fashionable and photographed abandoned radio towers for fun. The article painted me as self-contained. That was generous. We'd kept in touch loosely. A few drinks after her engagement fell apart. A shared laugh at some over-the-top LinkedIn posts. She'd always been good at reading between the lines, so when I messaged her out of the blue and asked if she had a minute, her reply was immediate. She met me at a quiet cafe halfway between her office and mine, though technically, mine no longer existed on any lease. I didn't sugarcoat it, told her I was legally dead, that my kids had been renamed, that my wife had orchestrated all of it with a level of calculation I still hadn't fully absorbed. Tessa listened without interrupting. Then she leaned back, folded her arms, and said, "We're documenting everything." I blinked. "We?" "I'm in," she said. "You're going to need someone who knows how to tell the truth like a story, and someone to verify that story if it ever comes to that." We started pulling thread, cross-referencing filing dates, cross-checking notary logs, digging into court clerk rosters. That's when her research uncovered a familiar name. Madison Trent, a legal assistant who had once worked for Lauren's divorce attorney. She left the firm 6 months before Lauren filed the death paperwork. Now she worked out of a private LLC offering family legal support services. Not a lawyer, just someone who helped with paperwork. We pulled her business registration, her address, her client list. Lauren was one of them, and the notary listed on my death certificate, once licensed out of the same mailing address. Tessa just looked at me and said, "She didn't do this alone." Number she didn't, but she was going to face it alone. Being alive doesn't count for much when the system has already closed your file. You'd think proving I wasn't dead would be as easy as walking into a government office and waving. It wasn't. DMV wanted a court order. Social Security said I needed a death certificate reversal. Banks needed updated identification, which I couldn't get without first proving I wasn't a ghost. It felt like a loop of locked doors. So I started building my own proof. I compiled recent tax returns, time-stamped security camera footage from my consulting gigs, tagged social media posts from colleagues, even receipts from gas stations and grocery stores, everything with a date, a time, and my name. Tessa helped organize it into a living timeline. But timelines weren't enough for court. I needed someone who could punch through the wall Lauren had built. Enter Mark Daly. I found him through a quiet thread on a legal forum. Someone recommended him with the phrase, "He doesn't rattle, he retools." When I sat across from him in his office, no-nonsense desk, no law school diploma on the wall, he looked at the stack of documents I brought, flipped through the first few pages, and said, "You're not the first dead man I've met, but you might be the most organized." I liked him immediately. He laid it out plain. We'd need to file a motion to reverse the death declaration, then file to reinstate parental rights, then begin proceedings to investigate fraud. It would be slow, ugly, and expensive. I told him I didn't care about the cost. "This about revenge?" he asked. "No," I said. "It's about nameplates, birth certificates, the kind of truth that doesn't need a courtroom to be real, but still needs one to matter." He nodded once. "Let's bring you back." For the first time in months, I didn't feel invisible. I felt dangerous. I didn't knock. I just stood in front of the door, waiting for her to see me. The neighborhood was one of those newer developments. Quiet cul-de-sac, identical mailboxes, curated landscaping, the kind of place people go to feel safe. When Lauren opened the door, she didn't scream. She didn't faint. She just stared like her brain couldn't find the words to match the image. The kids were behind her. Micah holding a tablet, Ella halfway down the stairs. She blinked once, then turned to them. "Go inside," she said quickly. "Now." Micah obeyed immediately. Ella hesitated, eyes locked on mine for just a second too long before Lauren snapped again, sharper this time, and she disappeared up the stairs. The door closed behind her with a quiet click. Lauren stepped outside. "You can't be here," she said. Her voice was tight, like she'd been holding her breath for months and didn't know how to let it out. "I'm not here to make a scene," I replied. "I just wanted to see your face when you realized I came back." She swallowed, glanced around the neighborhood like someone might be watching. "I had to do what I did," she said. "You wouldn't understand." "You're right," I said. "I don't understand. I don't understand how telling our kids their father died in a car crash counts as protection." Her jaw tensed. "They needed stability. You were always gone. You never committed to... So you buried me." My voice stayed even. "Filed papers, changed their names, told them I died saving someone overseas. I gave them closure." "No," I said. "You gave yourself a clean narrative. You didn't just remove me from their lives. You turned me into a story." She didn't answer. We stood there for a long time. Two people who used to share a life, now just silhouettes in each other's memory. I walked away without saying another word. Sometimes the most powerful confrontation is silence. The kind that doesn't beg for an apology, just leaves someone to sit with what they've done. I didn't want to ambush her. Ella deserved more than that. So I reached out to someone I trusted. Mrs. Langston, her 8th grade English teacher, the kind of educator who remembered birthdays and noticed when kids stopped smiling. She agreed to pass a message along. Nothing dramatic. Just a time, a place, and a simple note. "Your dad is alive. He wants to talk. You don't have to come." I waited at the park bench just outside the school's west gate, the one near the bike racks. At exactly 3:13, she appeared. She didn't say anything at first, just stood 10 feet away, arms crossed, backpack slung too low on one shoulder. 14 years old and already learning how to guard herself. "I don't believe it," she said. "I know," I replied. "You don't have to. My mom said you died trying to save someone, that you were a hero." I nodded slowly. She gave me a good ending. I'll give her that. Ella's eyes were sharp, skeptical, too old for her age. "Why would she lie?" "Because it's easier to explain a tragedy than it is to justify erasure." She didn't answer. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a photo, bent at the corners, time-stained. It was from a hiking trip 3 years ago. Just the two of us. She was holding a pine cone like it was treasure. Her handwriting was scrawled on the back. "Best day ever, Dad plus me." I handed it to her. Her fingers trembled slightly as she took it, stared at it, flipped it over, flipped it again. "I kept that in my wallet," I said. "The whole time." Her face didn't crack, but something shifted behind her eyes. "Why now?" she asked quietly. "Because you're old enough to decide what's true." She didn't hug me, she didn't cry, but she didn't run away either. "I have to go," she said, tucking the photo into her backpack. I nodded. "When you're ready to know the truth, I'll be here." And I watched her walk away, not knowing if she'd ever turn back, but knowing I'd wait regardless. Bringing someone back from the dead isn't romantic. It's bureaucratic. Mark called it a procedural resurrection. It required affidavits from employers, tax records, sworn testimony from people who'd seen me in the last 6 months, and an official motion to vacate the original death filing. Every step demanded documentation. Every document had to be notarized. Ironically, I wasn't just proving I existed. I was proving that someone had lied to make me disappear. Mark dug deep into the witness listed on the death certificate, Kevin Sandler. No employment history, no address, no credit activity. Eventually, we found a traffic citation issued to a Kevin Sandler 2 years prior, listed at an address in West Philly. But when we knocked, the guy who opened the door was named Marcus and had never heard of Lauren or me. Fake name, fake person. It was the notary that cracked first. Mark tracked down Jeanette Hollis, the one who supposedly notarized my death certificate. Her commission had expired well before the document was signed. When confronted, she admitted she used to rent desk space to Madison Trent, the legal assistant tied to Lauren's old attorney. Jeanette said she signed a stack of papers for Madison without reading them, claimed she was helping a friend with paperwork. Mark pressed harder. Eventually, she admitted that Madison offered her cash. For her time, she said, didn't seem like a big deal. It was fraud. Organized, intentional, and traceable. We filed everything with the court. A hearing was set. No guarantees, Mark reminded me, just progress. Every day between filings felt like a balancing act. I couldn't contact Ella again without risking Lauren claiming harassment. I couldn't post publicly without looking unstable. I was legally dead, emotionally radioactive, and floating somewhere between fatherhood and exile. But the paperwork was moving, and that was enough. Tessa called at 6:41 a.m. "It's live," she said. "Front page, online edition." The headline read, "Man declared dead by wife fights for identity and his children." She hadn't sensationalized it. No cheap tricks, just the facts. A legally alive man erased from the system. A custody case built on a lie. Documents, testimonies, names redacted where needed. But the story was unmistakably mine. Within hours, it spread. By noon, a family court spokesperson released a brief statement saying they were reviewing new evidence related to a prior custody decision. By 4 p.m., Mark received notice that an emergency hearing had been granted, 2 weeks from Friday. The pressure worked. Lauren's silence was telling. No phone calls, no cease and desist, no lawyer emails, but she was rattled. Tessa forwarded screenshots of parenting forums and local Facebook groups, people talking in hushed tones about the custody case where the dad wasn't actually dead. I wasn't trying to ruin her life. I wasn't even trying to win yet. I just wanted visibility. recognition, a place at the table. The story gave me that. I sat on my porch that night, laptop beside me, watching as the article racked up comments. Most were supportive, a few were skeptical. One simply said, "This is why you document everything." Yes, because truth without proof is just noise, and I was done being quiet. The hearing took place in a cramped courtroom with peeling ceiling tiles and water-stained walls. No drama, no gallery packed with reporters, just a folding table, a raised bench, and the kind of fluorescent lighting that makes everyone look guilty. I wore a suit I hadn't touched since my sister's wedding. It felt tight across the shoulders. Or maybe that was just the weight of the past 18 months pressing down. Lauren sat across from me, stiff in a navy blazer. Her attorney, some new face I didn't recognize, looked nervous before the hearing even started. He didn't make eye contact. The judge was direct. This hearing is to review an emergency motion to vacate a prior custody judgment based on a legally disputed declaration of death. Mark stood and began with the timeline. Travel receipts, surveillance footage, utility bills. Every document showing that I was living, working, breathing during the exact time I was supposedly dead. Then he presented the forged death certificate, the fake employer, the notary with an expired license, the witness who didn't exist. Every piece landed like a small hammer tap. Lauren's attorney began to visibly sweat. Then came the turning point. Mark called Jeanette Hollis to testify via video conference. She admitted she'd signed the document in exchange for cash, said she didn't know it was a death certificate at the time. The judge leaned back in her chair and exhaled slowly. "Miss Hollis, do you understand what perjury means?" Lauren's attorney stood and asked for a recess. 15 minutes later, he returned to the courtroom and formally withdrew from the case. Lauren sat alone. She didn't say a word, just stared down at the table in front of her like it had betrayed her too. The judge didn't rule on everything that day, but she granted me temporary joint custody, effective immediately, pending the outcome of the fraud investigation. I didn't smile, didn't celebrate, just signed the papers with a steady hand. The first document with my name on it in over a year. And this time, I wasn't dead. The first visit was awkward. Ella and Micah stood in my small rental kitchen like they were in a museum. Everything unfamiliar, everything fragile. I made grilled cheese the way I used to, cutting the crusts off just the way Micah liked, but he barely touched his plate. Ella sat quiet, her backpack still on. "I didn't think this would happen," she said finally. "I thought maybe I'd made it up. That feeling something wasn't right." "You didn't make it up," I told her. "You just knew what truth felt like, even when no one else did." She nodded slowly. Later, after Micah had fallen asleep on the couch, she found the photo I'd given her at the park, now tucked inside the frame of a bookshelf photo. She looked at it, then at me. "I kept it," she said. "I didn't need to ask why." Rebuilding didn't come all at once. It wasn't a montage. It was slow, uneven. Micah flinched when I raised my voice over a spilled glass of water. Ella took weeks before she called me Dad again, but it came. One bedtime at a time, one conversation at a time, one shared silence at a time. Lauren, meanwhile, was under investigation. Fraud, perjury, identity tampering. Mark told me it could take months, maybe longer. I didn't ask for updates. I wasn't waiting on her punishment. I had other things to focus on now, like soccer practice, like math homework, like Sunday pancakes with real maple syrup and lopsided smiles. I thought about how fast it had all been undone, how easily a person could be written out of their own story. One form, one lie, one rubber stamp at a courthouse that never looked up. But coming back, that took everything. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was just present, fully here. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. Legally, I died on a Tuesday, but I came back to life with a Thursday ruling and my daughter's hug. It wasn't dramatic. No courtroom applause, no big reunion soundtrack. Just a judge's signature, a case file marked reopened, and Ella's arms wrapping around me like they'd never forgotten the shape of my shoulders. Micah held my hand that morning. He didn't say much. He rarely did anymore. But when he leaned into my side as we walked toward the school, I felt something settle. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Just presence. I'd forgotten what a school morning sounded like. Zippers, cereal bowls, rushed teeth brushing. "Where's my other shoe?" echoes down the hall. It had been nearly 2 years since I'd walked them to class. Everything felt smaller. The sidewalk, the backpacks, even the sky. But their hands felt the same. We didn't talk much. There wasn't anything left to say, really. I wasn't trying to explain anymore. I was just showing up. That was the point. As we reached the school gates, Ella slowed. She turned and looked at me, not with the cautious doubt I'd gotten used to, but something new, something steadier. "Are you picking us up?" she asked. "If you want me to," I said. She nodded. "I do." Micah gave a quick wave before following her inside. I watched until they disappeared through the doors, swallowed by the blur of backpacks and bells. Then I stood there for a while, just breathing. I didn't think about Lauren, or the investigation, or the articles or court dates still ahead. That wasn't my story anymore. That was fallout. This was mine. I walked home slowly, felt the sidewalk under my shoes, felt the wind, the sun, the pulse of a world I'd been erased from and had quietly, stubbornly returned to. Identity isn't in paperwork. It's in presence. In showing up when they think you're gone. In keeping a photo in your wallet long after it's bent at the corners. In saying, "I'm here," even when nobody's listening. They buried a version of me, but I didn't stay buried. I walked back into my life, piece by piece, name by name, step by quiet, steady step. And this time, no one gets to write me out. This story was intense, but this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.